Now I want to ask you because you said that the Bomac called you up and said we need you to work the corner and work the cuts. So now I want to ask you about that. This is my last series of questions, and then we can open up to the chat if anybody
Okay.
wants to ask Christine a question here, and we'll wrap this thing up. But working cuts now, for people out there that might not know this, what is it that you're putting on the fighters' faces when you're rubbing them before the fight? I see them doing
Mhm.
rubbing. What do you put on their face, and where do you put it on their face, and why?
It's Vaseline, Vaseline, and above the arches of the eyebrows, here underneath, because your skin is thinner under your eye. you
Mm-hmm.
know I also do a little bit in the nose in case there's a bloody nose or dry nose and it starts bleeding because maybe your nostrils are dry and it's not really just the punch, just like whatever. The cheekbones, and then the chin, and I also go across the lip. I always joke and say, let me do your knees and elbows too because you're ashy, but that's a joke. We don't really do that. And I also do the ears, because you want the shots, the opponent's shot to slip off. If you get hit in the
Mm.
ear, and you've got dry, crusty ear, you don't want it to stay there. You want it to slide off.
So now, as far as cuts go, now you answered my question about what you put on the face and why and where. So when someone has a cut, let's most of the time when we see cuts in
Mm-hmm.
boxing, it's usually over somewhere in the eyebrow area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's the first thing that you do to try to stop a cut, or at least
The,
control it during the fight?
Yeah, so the first thing that I do, and I've had to do it before. I did it with Maurice too, but like, I mean, thank God, you couldn't tell that he was bleeding. But I've had to deal with deeper cuts, like crazy cuts. So the first thing I do is I wipe it off. You have a 4x4 gauze and you wipe it off, and then you have your Q-tip, and it has adrenaline on it. So
Mm.
adrenaline, it has to be prescription. You have to have a doctor on your team, to get it, because you just can't get it anywhere. I just hold it on there, and we only have, I mean, they say a minute, but honestly, you probably have like 43 seconds, to
Yeah.
get everything done. And as soon as you wipe it and you put the Q-tip in there, you just make sure that the blood has started to coagulate a little bit. You just kind of time it in your head, and then you have to get another layer of Vaseline to seal it up.
Mm.
Um, you can't put the adrenaline in the mouth, in the nostrils, or anything like that. It's just for the open cuts on the face. But yeah, really, something else that people don't talk about, and I think being a mother helped me a lot, was because we fix a bunch of cuts and white
Yes.
boogers, and make sure that our kids are safe. And so you have to be really calm in the corner, and because you don't want your athlete to react to your face like, oh shit,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what? And like, am I bleeding? No, you're good. You're not bleeding. What are you talking about? You have to be very calm, very
Mm.
calm.
See, those are all things that I would have never known just from being a
Hmm.
fan and not
Hmm.
speaking to someone with the experience. Because then that makes it makes so much sense. Because like, yeah, if someone's got a nasty cut, most people will react to like, oh my god. But like
Yeah,
you said, they can't see it. They don't have a mirror in front of them,
right.
and they're in the middle of a fight. So that makes a lot of sense, definitely. So now I
And
know
they're
you said that.
sweating, so it could
Yeah,
be sweat.
yeah, it drips more when you're sweating like that.
Right.
Um, so now I know you said that you can't use certain products in the nose or in the mouth. So
Yeah.
when a fighter has a nose that's bleeding, how do you control the bloody nose during the fight?
I mean, first of all, I make sure it's not broken. I mean, if it's broken, you're gonna get this thick black blood, and it's just like, oh man, you know. And you pretty much, you look at your boxer and be like, hey, how you feeling? You don't let it, oh, your nose is broken or whatever, because they're the adrenaline rush and the this and that. Um, and depending on where the break is, it's very that's a sticky situation. But if the nose is bleeding, I have some gauze that's already like a cotton swab, and I stop the bleeding. I put some Vaseline on it and kind of go here. And then it most of the time it stops, and we can get it stopped. Or I'll press, depending on which nostril it is, I'll press, or I'll put ice there, so in some states you cannot have open ice. It has to be in the medical bag, or in some you can use Ziplocs and some you can't. So just depending on what I have, or the inswell, if you put cold on it, 9 times out of 10 it's going to stop. So you just really have to gauge. There's not any injuries that are exactly, I mean, yeah, but that are exactly the same. It just, or no.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And Lisa hit it on the head here. I was going to ask this too. When we seen Sandro Martin, he did look like he had a broken nose because it was coming from the nostrils and out of his mouth.
Yes.
And we know that all that stuff is connected in your body.
Yes.
So, now one more thing, and then we could open up to the chat. If anybody has any questions, get them ready. This is my last question, guys.
Get them ready. Let's go.
So we talked about cuts on the eyes and the face and bloody noses. Now swelling. When a fighter starts swelling, how do you attack that, and how do you control the swelling throughout the fight?
Well, we have the inswells, and they come in different shapes, whatever. I personally like the flat, thin. It's the thinner inswell. Some people like the thick ones. I feel like with my thinner one, it holds the cold better. I always prepare, at the beginning of time, the day before or whatever, and I put my inswells in the freezer. I get them ready, and then, I carry around my ice, until I have to dump it or put it in something else. In my experience, and from what I've learned, from cut people that I really, really admire, I just press down on an egg, is what we call it, and there's some that move it back and forth. I personally do not, because you can move that bump. And so you just want to press it, and you do have to put a little bit of pressure. And 9 times out of 10, unless it's just something crazy, hematoma or something, it's going to go back. It is. So, and then also, I personally, so putting ice on the back of the head is so that the brain does not swell. It also cools them off. And we don't say, oh, this is so your brain doesn't swell. It's like, oh, let's cool you off, and put it on the back of the neck. Something that I do personally, and some do and some don't, is I also put ice on the chest at the same time. It's like you need 3 or 4 arms, but it always works out, thank God. Because I read somewhere long ago, I would just do it anyway, but I didn't know why. I read somewhere long ago that there is like a nerve ending that goes down to your stomach. I mean, the core is where everything comes from, and it kind of wakes you up a little bit. So that's something that I do. And a few people do it, but I will always try to do it.
Thank you all so much for watching this clip from the Gym Chronicles. Link to the full video will be in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to In the Ring with Christine and this channel as well.